YouTube, what's going on? YName Films back with another tutorial. Right now I'm going to be answering your question. Is the Sony A6300 still worth it in 2019? Alright guys, diving right in. As you may or may not know, the Sony A6300 released back in 2016. So yes, it's a 3-year-old camera, but that's not to say that this thing is not a beast, because it is. One of the pros to this camera is obviously 4K. This thing shoots great 4K. Actually, it shoots 6K and then it's downscaled to 4K, which makes it look even better. The image quality that comes out of this camera is serious. And for the price that this camera is out on the market as of right now, you can't really beat it. You really can't. $600 for the body, which is like a steal. Back when I bought this camera in 2017, it was still at $1,200. So that's one of the main reasons why I bought this camera, was strictly for the 4K. Otherwise, I would have went straight with the Sony A6000. So yeah, I saved my money up and made sure I got something that's worth really getting. Not to say that the Sony A6000 is not worth getting, because trust me, that is a beast of a camera also. But it's just lacking a few features that the Sony A6300 picked up. As you may or may not know, shortly after the A6300 came out, they came out with the Sony A6500, which also includes more features than what the A6300 has. So, and that's not to leave out the Sony A6400 that just released a few months back. I'm still learning the ins and outs about the A6400. I don't have one myself. I don't own one myself. Maybe one day, if I get my hands on it, I will test it out. This may not seem like a big deal to some of you, or maybe it does. When I first got this camera, I noticed that, I opened up the box and right away I seen a USB charging cable for this camera, which makes it very convenient when you're out on the go, and you can plug it in. You can leave it in your camera bag and plug it into a power port, and have your battery charging all day. So really, you have unlimited battery when you're out on the go. And if you are a Sony A6300 owner, you will know that the battery life on these cameras are terrible. Very, very big pro to owning one of these cameras is it does come with a USB charging cable. Alright, the next pro to this camera is it performs very well in low light. Very, very well in low light, as a matter of fact. The quality when it comes to this camera in low light, I wouldn't say if I didn't mean it. I highly recommend this camera if you are looking to shoot in low light, even if night photography is your thing, or even shooting video in nighttime. You really won't have much of a problem, So yeah, this camera can easily hit 5,000-6,000 before you even attempt to see any type of grain, any type of noise or grain in your images. So, and I mean, though it's not a Sony A7 III, for the price point, you really can't beat it. Moving on to the next pro I'd have to say about this camera: excellent autofocus. I really can't say anything more than that. The autofocus on this camera is unbelievable. And even using the Panasonic Lumix GH4 that I'm using right now, compared to this thing, it blows the GH4 out the water when it comes to autofocus. It's really the quickest. They say that it's the quickest autofocus on any camera on the planet. So I don't know, fun facts, Google it, see what you find. I wouldn't doubt it, because I really have no complaints when it comes to the autofocus. When you're in manual focus, you can use focus peaking, which is great. It actually shows you when you're in focus, by color, like red. I only use the red on it, so since I bought this camera, I've had it set to red. So focus peaking comes in clutch when you don't know what is in focus. If you want a more accurate focus reading, you're gonna want to put on your focus peaking. Also, along with that, this camera does shoot with zebras, and what zebras do is it actually shows you what part of the image is exposed correctly and what is not. Also, alongside that, face detection. This camera does have face detection, so if you move about, the focus will get dead smack on your face and it'll stay there. So awesome feature to this camera. So focus peaking, face detection, autofocus, all that, crisp, clean. I love it. I love it. I love it. I can't say enough about this camera when it comes to that. Moving on to the next pro, slow motion. This camera is a beast. It shoots up to 120 frames per second in 1080p. Also in 4K, it shoots up to 30 frames per second. That's one thing that it kind of lacks. Like, I would love for it to shoot, you know, even in 60 frames per second at 4K would be the icing on the cake. But unfortunately, that is not the case for this camera. But I mean, it shoots at 30 frames per second, so you give and you take. Obviously, another pro to this camera is it's very small and compact. You could fit it in small places. You could fit it in a small camera bag, or, you know, you could even put it in your back pocket. That's how small it is. Granted, the lenses do get pretty big, but I mean, if you have the kit lens on it, which I did have, but I sold it. But if you did have the kit lens on it, easily put it in your back pocket. That's how small this thing is, which could be a good or bad thing, because, you know, good that it is able to fit into small things, but bad because if you're out on a shoot and you want to be taken seriously, you may or may not be taken seriously. People see small cameras and they tend to think it's like a little small point and shoot, but that is not the case with this camera. Another pro, real quick, I'm going to compare this camera to the Sony A6000, the mic jack. There is no mic jack on the Sony A6000. That is another reason why I decided to get this camera. This camera does have a mic jack, and to me, that is very important because I do shoot vlogs, interview type style videos, and endless possibilities, and that's very crucial when it comes to shooting video, because on top of having a clean, crisp image, you're gonna want excellent, crisp audio. Point blank. There's not much more to say about that. And while I'm at it, since I'm talking about the mic jack, if I move up just a little bit higher, that brings me to the viewfinder. This is a Sony mirrorless camera, so meaning that there is no mirror in here to reflect up, and, you know, when you look into the viewfinder, you are getting an accurate reading. You are seeing exactly what you are pointing at. No ands, ifs, or buts about it. It's the real deal when you look into this viewfinder. The mirrorless takeover is just another, to me, it's another pro. It may not mean much to you, but for me, it means the world, because instead of looking at your LCD screen, you can actually look inside the viewfinder and get a more accurate reading. Moving on to the last pro of this camera, and then I will then move on to just a few cons, and not much. Last thing I want to go over real quick about this camera is the picture profiles. When you are shooting videos, if you are planning on color grading, it's very crucial to be able to set a picture profile on this thing. That is, sometimes I'll shoot in neutral, I'll color grade it from there. I've honestly never shot anything in standard. I don't really do that. I like to shoot in like something flatter. Cine 4 is a good start. SLog 2, I want to go over SLog 2 real quick, because me myself, I love SLog 2. It is a little bit harder to edit. It's a learning curve that you're just gonna have to figure out, trial and error. SLog 2 basically is just, you know, some high dynamic range into your camera, meaning you'll have more details in the highlights and more details in the shadows. The image is more flatter, which gives you more room to color grade and color correct in post-production. If you want a cleaner look, definitely the way to go is to shoot flat and then bring everything up in post. That's pretty much it for the pros. I'm gonna move on to the cons real quick. As I noted earlier, the battery life to these things are horrible. I own numerous batteries for the simple fact that they will die within like 20 minutes. That's how bad they are. 10, 11, 12 batteries are a must if you are looking to be shooting for at least a couple of hours. They're horrible, they're terrible. And I know the Sony A7300 just came out last year, and I hear those batteries are a lot better, which are great. Like I said, I would recommend buying a few or more batteries if you're looking to shoot for a couple of hours. 20 minutes to a half hour and the batteries are gone, especially if you're shooting in 4K. They go extremely fast. That's one thing that I wish Sony would have put into these cameras, were better batteries. Again, you could also buy the battery power grip. It allows you to hold like 2 or 3 batteries in at once. It just connects to the bottom of the camera. The next con to this camera, I would say, is rolling shutter. It doesn't happen to be a big deal to me because it can easily get edited out. It's not a deal breaker for me, but the rolling shutter is pretty bad on this camera. If you do shoot live events like sport, if you shoot basketball games or football games, or even at a racetrack, you know, and you're moving the camera fast, like back and forth like that, then yeah, you're gonna get a lot of rolling shutter. If you're doing things like what I do, music videos, or, you know, just vlogs, no big deal. You can work around them. I want to move on to the next con, which is sometimes if you're shooting for a little longer than normal in 4K, you know, it may overheat and it definitely will overheat if you're out on a hot summer day. No doubt about it. I've been out in 90-degree weather and it will overheat within about 5 minutes. So that's one thing to take note, that it will overheat out in extremely hot weather. Another con is the flip out screen. Really, all it does is flip out. It's not a swivel screen. So if you're vlogging, this is as far as it'll get you. Luckily, I picked up one of these. This thing comes in clutch. It's called Field World. I believe it's the F7. It's a 4K monitor. Hook it up to the top of the camera. You know, you'll be able to see yourself when you're vlogging and shoot good videos. Last final, con to this camera is there's no IBIS in this camera, meaning in-body image stabilization. So, if you are out vlogging and you don't happen to own a lens that has optical steady shot on it, then you're gonna get very, very jittery, shaky shots. Really only one way around that. Actually, there's two ways around that. The first way is to invest in some lenses that have OSS in it. OSS meaning optical steady shot. Optical steady shot will basically be your I won't even call it in-body image stabilization anymore. I'll call it in-lens image stabilization, because it will come in clutch if you are planning on shooting anything with motion, jittery, jerky, all that good stuff. The second way to get over the no IBIS in your camera is to use a gimbal. If you want steady shots, use a gimbal. There's not much more to say about that. I thank you all for checking out this video. I hope this helps you. The answer to the question, is this camera still worth buying in 2019? My answer to that is absolutely, and it is worth every single penny that you put in to getting this camera. Especially now that it's only $600, I don't see why you wouldn't get it. Alright, that's it guys. I'm gonna wrap this up. If you like this video, go ahead and smash that like button. Also, if you're new to the channel, please consider subscribing, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace out guys.